Good morning, everyone. I'm Brian, Career Advice UK known as the Career Change Guy, and I'm going to be coming to you live for about the next hour or so, taking your questions on anything career related. So CV cover letters, AI generated CVs, how to write a resignation letter, and more. So if you have a question, feel free to put it down and I will pick it up on a first come, first served basis. And I will also take your questions, and I will be talking a little bit today as I in between questions talking about the topic of AI and resignation letters. For those of you who don't know, I run a service called Leap Forward Careers to help people with CV, interview preparation, feedback on interviews, LinkedIn profile optimization, and more. So I would encourage you to take a look at Leap Forward Careers. I do offer several free guides, such as on disability, and also a CV check for ATS before you submit your CV, a checklist of what to make sure. So, hey, NAMI, to what you need to do before you submit your CV to make sure it gets picked up and gives you the best chance of getting an interview. So with that said, one of the questions I do get a lot of, it is in regards to resignation and how do you write a resignation letter. There is a lot of times when it comes to resigning your position, a lot of times people will want to go with the thought of trying to spill it all out and write a very long, hey, LB, welcome back. And to write a long soliloquy about what led them to decide to leave and the reasons why they're leaving. And the reality is this. No, you really need to keep your resignation letter short and very brief, because at the end of the day, that resignation letter brings your contract to an end. It's a legal document, and it can have an impact on your references and also your reputation. So you don't want to burn a bridge that you don't have to by putting out a very kind of emotionally written letter that may do you more damage than help you. Where you can bring up some of your issues like that is in your exit interview. You will be given, if you're an employee, not a contractor, a lot of times you will be given a exit interview. The exit interview will allow you to kind of talk about it. If you haven't raised the issue already, there's nothing that can really be done to really resolve it, but you can let it be made known if you had some issues along the way to do it. So you can do it, and usually exit interviews are either done by your line manager or HR. So that, it's a way for organizations to learn why do people leave, what could have kept them, what could have been maybe done differently to retain that individual. And so the point is really keep it, very short, because it can have an impact, and knock-on effect later for you. So yes, so it can be an emotional time, and if your line manager asks, why have you turned in your notice? Hey, thank you, Will. Why have you turned in your notice? It is really important, again, not to really go into a lot of detail, because sometimes they'll try to talk you out of it, especially if they are, finding it difficult to bring in people to replace you. And if you are in the position to, if you're looking to kind of try to do negotiation, again, the reality is kind of like this, and I've talked about this in one of my earlier videos, is even if it is a bit about pay, a lot of times when you do talk about pay is you will typically wind up, a lot of people will still leave within a year because really the issue is not about pay, it's about something else. And so, yes, they may be able to offer you a bit more pay, maybe a little bit more flexibility, but really it doesn't address the underlying issue, and it's just a bandage on, it is a band-aid to the problem, so it will be, it doesn't block, it doesn't solve it, it will still be there, and what you will just find that, you will ultimately probably leave. So it is the best, to say, and just be really assertive with your line manager. They do ask, just say, you've reached a decision, that you're going to leave, and this is, the date of leaving based on your contract, and don't leave like the, don't, approach it like I'm thinking about leaving, or I've kind of thought, I should leave. If you leave it kind of wishy-washy, it does leave the opportunity for them to kind of counter. And if you do counter, which is, fine, it's your decision ultimately. Most people will still leave after a year, within the year, because it's not addressing the issue. So to talk a little, so best advice is, with resignation letters, keep it very short, keep it to the point. Don't go into detail, and don't get into anything emotive. Even if it is short, don't get into anything emotive. When I do resignation letters, what I will always state is for personal reasons. Made a personal choice, and just kind of leave it at that. It really kind of cuts it off at that stage, because like I said, it is a legal document. It is something that can really come back to haunt you if you go into a whole kind of novella soliloquy, where you're kind of going through all the issues, that led you to leave. It doesn't do you any good to do that. So keep it short, keep it simple, keep it to the point. So if you do have a question, feel free to put it down. If you have an upcoming interview, let me know, because it is right now, Aaron. It is a very kind of competitive market, and if you're looking for apprenticeships, one of the things it is you really need to kind of just show a very much of an interest in it. If you're going to be applying to a company, one of the things I do here is, especially at the entry level, if they ask you, or you get the question in an interview, what do you know about the company? A lot of people don't know, and that can really work against you. So best advice is, one of the things you can do is, when you're applying for apprenticeships, research the company that you're applying to. Include something that you can work into. The reason for applying is something that you picked up about the company that you liked and kind of led you to apply to them. So show that you know something about the company. If you have any experience, or you've done any observation or any placement with, joinery, get that out. It is going to be, apprenticeships are competitive. I sometimes think they are more competitive than going to, let's say, atop Russell University because there are a lot less places in apprenticeships, and and there's not really the interest in it as much as students still who are looking to do placements and all university apprenticeships. A lot are still preferring to go to university, and so there's a lot more. Hey, thank you, Wardy, for the follow. That's really nice. So a lot of people are still going, to university. So there is, apprenticeships fit a very kind of unique group of people. So the Dalmatian is downstairs today. So, so he's down there sleeping. There's taking a little bit of a rest. So yeah, so they're downstairs today. So yeah, so what I will say, it really depends. On internships, are they that important? The thing is with placements is really what they do give you is a bit of skill, something you can put onto your CV to say you've dealt with it. You have an idea. They become more vital if they really relate to what you want to do. So if you're looking to move into private equity and you've done a placement, so if you're doing private equity and you do, let's say, a placement with a firm in private equity, that's going to give you potentially a little bit of a leg up on others who are applying just out of uni that may not have that type of experience. But if, let's say, you've done private equity and you're applying to a bank, hypothetically, you're applying for a bank in mortgage, private equity, would give you some experience, some knowledge, of banking, but it's, again, doesn't fully meet, the role of, mortgage, a mortgage advisor, mortgage manager. And so it will show that you have a certain skill set, that you're able to follow something through, you have some of the experience, that may or may not relate to the role. And so it kind of gives you, hey, Emerson, thank you for the like. So it gives you, something you can put on CV, something you can show as experience, and not necessarily, hey, Luma, thank you for the like. So it doesn't really, really give you that, step up. Also, too, what you have to remember, too, with internships and placements is you don't, some of them will employ you, some of you won't. It really depends on a bit of how are you treated. Are you treated as a student? Are you actually being hired by the organization? That also has a bit of a play into it. If you're an employee, and if you are, an employee, I'll come to you in a moment, Brandon. Again, it gives you that kind of like business reference. If you're just treated as a student, again, it's just something you put onto your CV. So I really, when it comes to placements, and plus two, when you work in a year, it does help, but you really don't start to really get into that. So if you're hypothetically working private equity, you're taking time to learn, you're taking time to develop, and by the time you start to become, functional and, being able to contribute, your placement ends. So what it does say that you have some knowledge, but you really are not You don't really have that kind of really insider knowledge to really help you. So it helps, but it doesn't, how should I say, it really doesn't get you, it doesn't really give you a heads up. I don't believe it does help, but it doesn't, it doesn't hurt, but it doesn't necessarily always helps. It really, it helps more if you're really going close to something, to the placement that you've done. Good question, Brandon. 1 second, Rude Alley, I will come back to you. So what I would say to you is this. One of the questions you're going to probably be given is, what do you know about the organization? So spend time to know about the organization. Think about some of the experiences you've had. Now at retail, a lot of it is going to be kind of customer focused, time management. How do you deal with competing demands? How do you deal with a difficult customer? How do you get along with employees, when you may not agree with them? And think about those types of situations and maybe where you've had to deal with them. They don't have to be work-related if you have no work-related experience. It can be academic, volunteering, extracurricular, where you had to deal with these. So you can give those types of examples to it. And key really is know something about the organization, because that's one of the questions almost likely you'll get. So if you can say something about the company that you're doing, interviewing for, it will go a long way. So if you want to be, it's just IT. Okay, so it is, it's an IT role. So would it be help desk? Are you talking like sitting service desk, help desk? When you say just IT. Hey, Karina, thank you for the share. What you need to do, Luna, is, and I do as part of my service Leap for Careers, I do help people with career changes. The thing to do is, what you need to focus on is not what, job titles and what you've done in the way of tasks, but look at your skills and then look at what the employer is looking for and show to them. And the best way to do that is a functional CV to highlight your skills so that they can see that you do have. And so if you're talking about, and if you have an internship, again, show that. So if there is, okay, Liam, 1 second, I'll come to you. So if it is, again, it's good to get, because software engineers can be a bit more of a junior, a bit up with experience. So it's good to get yourself at least some experience in IT, because you're going to still need to understand, because what we'll do is this type of experience will probably give you the foundation to help you work as a software engineer, to take a look at error logs, to know how to use the ITSM system, information technology, systems management, type of software, how to manage calls, how to resolve issues, how to get right. You may be doing a bit of coding and software installation using switches. So I think it will give you the foundation, and I think that would be what you would need to highlight to a potential employer. Let me come to you, Liam. Okay, so was this, if you sent a grievance, was that because you anticipate you're going to be facing disciplinary, or you're already sent down the disciplinary route, or you started the kind of informal kind of performance disciplinary process, because there's an informal and a formal process. And usually what happens along the way is, when the process kicks off, the employee will typically file a grievance. And so what it should happen is, if you have a grievance, the disciplinary should stop until that grievance gets heard and resolved, and then it can pick up. If you're a member of a union, I would say speak to a union. It may be worth, not knowing all the facts, it may be worth having a lot of times employment solicitors will do like a free 30-minute call. You can use them. Also, you could use consumer advice, but they can take a long time, and by the time you're able to see them, probably this will be all resolved. You can't ask for garden leave unless you're resigning. And usually you don't get garden leave unless you're dealing with sensitive information, confidential information, because they don't want you taking that information to another employer. So they'll keep you on your notice period. You don't work during your notice period. A lot of times employers will only do that if you're dealing with, let's say you're a salesperson, you know the customers, so you don't learn, who are the new customers, and keep up to date, so some of the information you get is outdated, and so they'll do it that way. So best, you can ask, but most of the time on the CV, it doesn't matter. McDonald's has, a lot of people do know this, McDonald's has probably one of the best employee development programs in the world. They're known internationally for their training and development. So what I would do is, again, depending on what you do, you assist the customers. You answer customer queries. You took payment from customers. If you're working in the back as a cook, you manage your workload by prioritizing orders. You took orders. You assembled as per customer request. You assembled their order per request. It is just instead of just saying I flip burgers, you put it more, make it more professional, and talk about and look at what the job description says, and then try to match those skills to it and use the similar tone of the job description, use similar wording, so that if you are using, if it goes through ATS, which it typically will, it picks it up. If your grievance was retaliatory, and it was kind of a very kind of knee-jerk reaction because of a situation, it's always, you need to think about it, because it may wind up following you. Okay. Yeah, if you are, if you can, I think Rare is right. If you can find a new job before you resign, that's good. What you just need to do is keep it very low key. You don't want your employer to know. Don't let people know at your job you're looking. Don't know friends. Don't post on any social media that you're looking. if people do get wind that you are, hey, Junior, thank you for the follow, you're looking for something, it may come back later to haunt you, and it is better to keep it as low-key as possible. When you do send off applications, always state they're not, that they're not authorized to make contact until you've been interviewed. It is only after the interview can they contact for a reference, because they will need to contact them at some point. Yep, exactly, Rare. There are no such thing as work friends. Because they're all liability, because they're all looking to get promoted. They're all looking for that edge, and they will sell you out as quickly as possible in order to be able to advance themselves or their position or to get recognition. So it's always, always important when you're doing things like this to keep it very low key and keep it out of anyone, because it may be possible that they will say something, and at that point, guess what? A lot of things will start to fall apart. Hey, Yar, how are you? Hey, yep, they will do it. They will do it. And it is, they will sell you out. And it is very easy to become very jaded. So yeah, you really do need to think about, about keeping things on the low key, because if you don't, it may become a situation that will be hard to rectify. Because when I line managed, what I was told as a line manager, and this was several years ago, was that anyone that doesn't have values or goals that align with the objectives of the business, they are to be managed out the door. Basically was told that if somebody comes in, if I have an employee, somebody that I supervise, whose objectives change from the business, have interests out, doesn't align development goals, it is, they are to be managed out the door. They're not to remain. So it's just kind of support them, but again, kind of like hasta la vista. There's not much of an opportunity for them, and so, I've always take that lesson, that experience with me. So when I'm applying, I have nope. No, it isn't. I agree with you, Rera, because I don't believe work friends. I think that's, from my own experience, that is where a lot of nepotism comes in, and a lot of employee dissatisfaction comes in, is when managers start to promote their friends over those who are more qualified, in order to kind of maintain friendship, and they don't. Hey, Booba, good to see you. it is, I think, work friends doesn't work. I think it creates a lot of tension, and I think it, especially in the UK, um, I think in the UK, I think it creates a lot of, I think there is, in my opinion, a lot of, um, it is a blind spot. Hey, thank you, Lemonator. Um, it's a very much a blind spot, and I think in corporate governance in the UK, the impact of hiring friends and family into roles. Um, I think it is. I think that is a major. I think for me a very major problem, because I think when you have work friends, you start to. Yep, it is, because I think with that, um, so yeah, I think that's the one thing. Um, the one thing. It is the one thing that I think really um, has a big problem with morale in the workplace. It is this very much, um, that's very much friendship, and kind of putting, favoring work friends. I ran that into that issue as a line manager. It was a really complicated situation. My line manager was engaged to one of my team members, and that individual to whom she was engaged didn't get along really well with another team member of mine, and I got a lot of flack from my line manager, um, because they didn't get along, and they tried to lean on me to really kind of take down, um, to really take them down to disciplinary, and to in every little kind of infraction, basically told to kind of just lean on them and to speak with them, and to and to kind of quote manage them. Um, and that individual was then um, suffered an injury, and again, that line manager, my line manager, tried to get me to try to kind of manage him out and not have him come back, and basically take him down disciplinary for um, being off sick, to have surgery to repair an injury that they sustained. And I just said, absolutely not. Because there is a kind of consideration in the way of disability, um, because they would be off for a while, a couple of months, and then return. So it was kind of like a short term, at least at minimum short term, if not a permanent disability, and wouldn't do it. And so it is one of these things. Hey, Elon X. Um, and because I took, that very much that position, um, I wound up getting a lot of times excluded from advanced. Line manager wouldn't really hand over and let me manage the team. And so it really just became a really untenable position, and it really wound up burning me out. And that line manager, I believe, abused their power, and abused their position in order to basically to protect their fiance. So yeah, I am a really big, strong believer that you can't be, distanced from them, and you need to, and there should have been a lot more done, I think, in the way of how that relationship was managed within the organization. I think, in my opinion, that individual should have been in another division, because it was a very large organization, several thousand employees. It was really easy that individual, and there was two separate offices in the town that I lived, and that individual could have been moved, or one of them could have been moved to the other office, assigned to a different department, and worked. So I think, in my opinion, I think it was Lennox, thank you for the follow. So I do think it was a really bad situation, and I think it really highlights the need for, at least in my experience, in my opinion, better management, especially as it relates to nepotism and hiring of family and close friends in the workplace. Another example I can give of that is several years later, I worked for another organization, and it was very much a clique that basically were very good friends with the manager, and so one of them, in less than a year, jumped 2 pay bands, which is almost unheard of, but basically were promoted, and again, it was a bit of a pay, plus two, there was a more senior manager role that came on. It was me and my co-worker, and because the hey, Algae Camera, hey, thanks for the follow. Because the line manager was friends with the other individual, they got promoted over me, even though I had more experience and more relevant experience, and inexperience over them, because they were good old friends with the line manager. They were promoted. So I never really let the guy manage me, because he would have been my line manager. I never really let him manage. And I found a way to get out of the department, which I did. And glad that I did. So we do all face that. And again, I think to me, it is a very much a blind side. That a lot of corporate governance and boards, as they look at how to manage the organization from a strategic point, don't take into account nepotism, and nepotism, I think, is really rampant, and I think it's in certain aspects of public sector, I think it is very prevalent and very big. So we've had a really good day and a lot of good questions. So just remind you, if you do like the feed, please please share what you've been doing. It's been really much appreciated. And please follow what you've also been doing. It's really great. Thank you. And if you do feel inclined, don't feel as though you have to, please think, as it really does let me know what people like. And it helps me to, hey, thank you, Ann Jan. Thank you for the like. It helps me to know what people enjoy, and gifts do help me to plan and stuff, so it does help me out. So if you do have that ability. I appreciate it, but again, not required. And also, too, I do, have, I've done a book, Job Seekers Playbook, very comprehensive guide to the job market in the UK for 2026. Has tips, advice, and templates. I have been offering it as free. All I just need is for you to contact me, and I will send it to you, the code and stuff. But the code, I do believe, will expire tomorrow. So if you do want it, let me know. And I know it's it is one of these very difficult situations in the UK. If you were in the U.S. system, you would be able to easily switch programs, switch majors, and even universities without very little penalty. Unfortunately, hey Dodo, how are you? However, in the UK, in your 4th year, to change right now. Hey, good to hear that. Hey, and thank you for the follow. What it does mean at that stage is if you do try to change, you'll probably face a lot of penalties, meaning that you won't be probably allowed to change. I'm in North Yorkshire in the United Kingdom. What it will mean is, you won't be allowed to change university or program without penalty, so you may mean that you have to pay for it yourself. And sometimes, because right now UK employers are beginning to realize that it's more about, hey, nice to meet you too. It's more about the skills that you have than actual qualifications. So it can mean if you can take your education and find it and transfer it to something that you like, you may be able to be able to move it on. You can take it on. So what it can mean is, you can look for jobs where you have the same. Okay. So, hey, Sheps. So what I would say to you is, let's see. I lost my train of thought. So what I would say to do is take a look, start to look for jobs that match your skills and move on, and maybe take a look at potentially doing, let's say, a master's, if you can, to maybe help to align you. And take a look at that. Maybe do a master's where you can maybe move yourself back to where you enjoy, or sometimes you can do a conversion course, a year conversion, to help you, change fields. So if you're having no luck with interviews, Ships, tell me about that. Are you sending off the same CV? Hey, Teacher Yos. Hey, thank you for the follow. So are you sending off the same CV, Ships? So when you say no luck, what do you mean? Okay. So are you, when you're going into those interviews, are you kind of winging it? Meaning that you maybe have interviewed a couple times before. Okay. Okay, so it's a bit about a confidence. Um, okay, so couple things. Um, on Leap Forward Careers, I do have a test bank of interview questions to that will ask you questions, give you a chance to respond back, and give you some feedback. If you're interested in it, in something like that, let me know. I'll send you the information, and that's free of charge. That is free to use. There's a interview test bank of questions that will ask you, give you feedback, and kind of give you some practice questions with that. The other thing with interviews, what you need to do is learn something about the organization, learn something about their values, because they are going to want to know, what do you know about them. Also, too, sometimes it's about confidence, and and I do offer a bit of interview support one-on-one, again, but it is done at a charge through the service. So again, if that's something of interest, let me know. So when you're doing interviews, what you really need to do is look at the job description, know what they're looking for in it, and start to do a bit of a match with your skills. So when they start to ask you questions, you have an idea of what skill does that relate to, and then your experience relates to, and then you can come back and answer with that experience. Because what you need to do in interviews is not speak kind of hypothetically, kind of euphemistically, like, this is how I would handle it. This is what I would do in this situation. It's not about what you would do or how you would handle it. It's about what have you done, what have you delivered. So if you have things where you have, delivered, or, you got things where you have achieved, you can start to talk about that. So if they ask you, like, hypothetically, if you're doing, let's say, customer service interview, tell us a time that you had to you helped a difficult customer. So you can give something, an example like, somebody came into the store, they were really upset, and they were really upset and kind of started to take it out on me. I just ignored it. I listened to what they were asking. They were asking about this. Gave them showed them where, provided them with the product, also gave them some alternatives, and was able to make the sale. A few days later, they wrote back and, thanked my manager for the assistance, and they were happy with what they purchased. So it really shows that you were delivered, you were able to make somebody happy. Oh, well, thank you, Emzo. Hand hearts. Oh, that's so nice. Thank you. And so it really then shows, hey, Emzo, how are you? And Dee Dee, thank you for the follow. So, what it does show is that we're able to deliver something. It shows that you're able to help somebody out. It showed that you achieved something delivered. And that's what they really want to hear. They want to hear basically why did they come up, what did you do, and what was the result. And really start to talk about, deliverability. Deliverability. What did you deliver? What did you do? And that's what you really need to do in an interview. So interview prep, like I said, I do, if you're interested, message me afterwards. I'll give you the information on how to access at free of charge the interview test question bank. Also, too, like I said, I do offer at a charge interview support and help to go through questions, help afterwards, and provide support ongoing if you want that. and we can talk about that if you want. And also to, and just to give you some ideas and some tips, is to look at, hey, Ships, thank you for the follow. Yes, that's great. AMEO, thanks. Yeah, so it is just really about structuring and knowing how to structure your response. So, so if you are just joining and you do like the feed, please like, please share, and please follow. And if you do feel inclined, but don't feel so you have to, please send gifts, because it really does help me to know what is resonating with people. And like I said, if you are, just joining, it's been a really busy day. A lot of great questions. It's really kind of covered the gamut on interviewing, and also disciplinary and looking for another job while still being employed. It is a really good, I think, it's a really good question, I think, and we did do a bit of talk on nepotism and the problems with nepotism in the workplace. Because it is, nepotism is one of those, I think, big problems that it impacts a lot of people, and I think a lot of people are impacted, but they're too afraid to say anything because of fear of retribution and fear of being taken down disciplinary. Because of the way relationships play out in the workplace. And I think that in the UK workplace especially, there is not a clear line between work and home, and I think that it does get, the line between work and home does get blurred too much, and I think sometimes those who lead lose sight of that, and they lose sight of it needs to keep things professional, and kind of keep personal feelings out of it. I think, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. So, and I've done a lot of Yellow, a lot of recent content on this. I'm talking about the very difficult job market. Tell me a little bit about what have you done so far. Well, thank you for the likes, Yellow. So what has caused you to lose hope? So there is, like I said, if you check out my content, I've done a lot on this. What I would say to you is, if you've kind of lost hope in the job market, there's a couple just quick tips and advice I can give off. Okay. Again, I've just had this with Ships. On Leap Forward Careers, I do have an interview test bank of questions. It will ask you questions. You respond to it, by typing in your response, and it will give you some feedback on it. So there's one thing to do. The other thing is also a couple things. Is not to send off the same CV to each employer. If you fixed it up and you've just sent the same one off, that is going to be. The other thing too is, if you're applying for roles, what you need to be doing is being very, very strategic And so if you're not matching the role by about 80%, you're going to be, probably not getting the interview. So if it's 80%, at least 80% in meeting, all the essential criteria, you're going to probably struggle. What you also need to do is, besides practicing interview skills, is also making sure that you align your CV with the job description, so that you take a look at your skills, look at your job description, look at the skills that they want, think about your experiences, and then put that into the CV. Sending off the same CV every time, it's not going to work, because a lot of places are now using application tracking system to track applications, to prioritize. And so if you're not, using the kind of keywords, the structure, again, it could be the structure. There's a lot that can be going on, the structure of it, the right words. It can be, like the wrong words, the wrong structure. It may be, you're putting on a lot of irrelevant stuff onto it. And again, and that may be impacting. Taking a look at it. And also, too, again, I think you're doing right with the practicing your interviewing skills. I think, too, one of the bigger issues is making sure you're prepared and not to wing it. And I don't think, from what you're saying here, that you are kind of winging interviews, but it does happen. People do it. And again, like I said, I do offer, again, some interview help beyond the practice word bank interview questions. So if you do, want a bit more help, again, like I said, message me afterwards. I can send you the information for the free, interview bank, along with, if you're interested in getting some support and help with interviewing, I can do that too. So yeah, I think there is. So the real big tip and advice is this: if you have given up, there is a lot. And you can do also too, what you want to start doing is, because I do talk about in my content with people who are struggling to find jobs, is tapping into what's called the hidden job market. And because what the hidden job market is, it's where people are getting jobs through promotions, through connections, and also using, recruiters who can put together a list of potential candidates, and then present them to an employer, so the jobs never get seen. And so, and how to really tap into that, because it is something that a lot of people don't realize, is that when you're going onto the job boards, you are basically applying for the jobs with the most applicants, because those are the ones that are not getting filled by recruitment, referrals, or internal promotions. And I do, can work, and I do work with people on developing a strategy on how to, find jobs, kind of keep them motivated. I can provide, like weekly support, and give you, it really, Chef's, good question. It really depends on your field, because there are a lot of agencies that are very kind of, especially if you're legal and IT. I know from my own experience, if you are, because I work in IT and legal, if you're trying to find administration, okay, that's good. There's several, LinkedIn, Indeed. If you're in the UK, CV Library is another one. Hayes is also good, and Read possibly, depending on your skill and background. Also, to Adecco and Blue Arrow are also two potential other websites. So there is, especially administration, is it is a very, how should I say, easy to find job boards. But what I would also say to you as a part of that is also don't look so much on job boards, job sites. Start looking at companies, and start applying directly to them. Because a lot of them will list jobs. A lot of them won't list all the jobs on job boards. They will sometimes list it, just on their site. And they will list it on their site. And so it may be that they, just post it there. So you may find stuff that you don't see on like CV Library, Read, Hayes, or LinkedIn, because it's just specific to them. Yeah, I think you do miss a lot because not all of them will post. I think what you kind of, find companies, and you can send out speculative, but what I always will tell people with speculative is it is speculative, and so don't expect a reply back, because right now companies are facing 3 applicants for every job, and so that means they're very inundated with reviewing stuff. And so if you send off a speculative, if you're going to send off 100, just expect if you get 1 or 2 replies back, you're very lucky. And I think too with speculatives, it's a good strategy to have, in the sense that it will, it's one part of your strategy, but I wouldn't, rely on it too much. It's a good way to kind of let people know you're looking. What I would say to you instead would be, is look at the companies, look at their websites, and start, making applications to them. Find the jobs that match very closely to your skill set, and then, and then send it to them and apply, because you'll be a lot better off to a certain extent applying directly. I have a kind of a if retail is probably your biggest skill set, it may be where you wind up going. The other, hey Sheila, the other thing to do is look at the skills, because it's not about the task you've done or your job title. It's about the skills you have, and it's knowing how to market it and how to communicate those to you. So if you if you have administration, then you do have the skill set. If you have administration, I don't know where you're located. If you are in Patrick, if you are in the UK, then what you want to look at also too is Office Angels. I think the Office Angels is good for administration, very much administration driven. Okay, good. Take a look at Office Angels. It may be more your level. They're a small organization. They're and so they're relatively small, kind of limited in location. So it may not be somebody that's, it may not have jobs in your area, but they do specialize very closely in admin type of roles, admin, legal secretary into things. So, so take a look at them. If you're looking bookkeeper, it is a, if you're looking bookkeeper, again, it's a lot. I think Hayes and Indeed have a lot. Take a look also, I always will say LinkedIn. Take a look at LinkedIn. CV Library has a lot, I believe, with bookkeepers. And again, look at companies, especially like accounting firms, accounting construction, firms looking for bookkeepers. Again, those are so it would be, take a look at them. So yeah, very much some very good questions today. Really appreciate the questions. So if you, I am beginning to wind down a bit, about 5 minutes. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them down. If you do like the feed, please like, please share, please follow. And if you do feel inclined, but don't feel so you have to, please send gifts, as it really helps me to know what people like and what resonates, and helps me to plan content. So if you have, any questions, I'm not sticking really tight to it's about 4 minutes. I'm not going to really stick to that. So if you do have a quick question, I'll pick it up, before winding down. But if I don't get any questions in the next 4 minutes or so, I will probably sign off and be back, I think probably Friday, because typically I will go usually off on Wednesdays and Thursdays. But if you don't, Jaden, that's a good question. I think it is, and I think for me, and this is where I always talk about kind of the limitations of the UK education system, for university, is that you're forced to know what you want to do before you even put foot into a lecture hall, to even wondering. And so what, I'll come to you in a quick question page. So I think it is, what you're going to want to do at 17, 18 will probably change by the time you're 35 or 40. 33% of UK workers in any given year will be looking to do a career change. And so that really speaks volumes. I think what you really need to do is really think about what really makes you happy, what do you enjoy really to do, and what you would do if you were able to do it if people wouldn't pay you and you would still do it for free. What is it that you're really passionate about and really enjoy? And sometimes passion and experience and ability doesn't always mesh. So you also have to kind of think about, what is your passion? What do you really enjoy? What would you do if you weren't paid? Are you able to do that long term? Are you able to do it, or is it just more of a hobby? And then start to think about, do you have the skills to build it, and what do you need to do it? I think with, for me, when I talk about, if you, No problem, Jaden. That's what I'm here for. Um, well, thank you for the follow. If you're thinking about architect page, the one thing I do speak about, and I've been doing that the last like 2 or 3 weeks, but I haven't had that question pop up this week that much, is about AI in careers. And what I tend to talk about is, you know, what is it that, you know, about, and I talk about kind of about 30 years ago when computers were kind of beginning to come into homes, the workplace, the 30, 40 years ago when it was really beginning to make inroads, and all the doom and gloom and the prophetic, people claiming that AI was going to replace all the jobs. We'd be out of jobs. High Street would be gone. We would be doing all of our shopping online. And businesses would just basically evaporate and move online. And that's what, all, the doom, the sitting naysayers of doom would say is, everything is going to change. We're going to lose everything. Um, and, we're going to lose it all because of computers. And the reality is this, when computers came in, and it became, commonplace at home and at the workplace, what we saw was, certain skills like 10 King went, it's, AI is a bit more than just a tool. It is a way to become a lot more efficient. Um, it is, I think, with AI, it is something that you still, because with AI where it is right now, you still need to know how to speak to it. You need to be able to direct it. And then when it outputs, you need to be able to output it and and then make changes and fixes, and then get it to fix it and make the updates. And so with the experience I've had in business, sitting on committees to talk about the use of AI, um, and it is not, it's not. I don't believe, again, the naysayers who will say it's going to eliminate all the jobs. I think it's going to make it more. Um, I think it will make a lot of efficiencies. If you look when computers came in, you know, one of the jobs that they kept on hammering on and hammering on and hammering on about was like you're going to lose cashiers, you're going to lose stock people to robots. Robots and computers will take over stocking shelves and checking you out. You won't need them because you can all do it yourself. Self checkout will replace, and it didn't, because really at the end of the day, what it really came down to is this: people wanted contact with people. People didn't want to take machines, so jobs like cashier remained. Stockers, clerks still remained because people wanted that contact. They wanted to ask a clerk, where do I find this? They didn't want to ask a robot. People wanted to go into a store and look at the cantaloupe, to look at and feel the green pepper. They didn't want a machine to tell them that this cantaloupe was fresh, or this strawberry was fresh. They wanted to be able to definitely, they still wanted that. And so hence the reason why that kind of tangible, human kind of contact with people, and to be able to experience and see it, instead of relying images on a computer, um, what was used. And so what we see at the end is with computers was there was a lot of changes in the workplace. Things became more efficient, But jobs change, and new jobs like data analysis, data analysts, cybersecurity, advances, in technology. So it is, and it is going to, I believe, going to happen again with AI. We're going to see more efficiency. People are still going to need to oversee, what's going to be entered into AI, to test the output, to check the output, because at the end of the day, I know when I use AI to write code for myself, I know I have to sit through it, I have to test it, I have to be able to direct it. And yes, it may take, a lot, it may be more efficient to save me time, but I still have to take several hours. I have to write the instructions for it, have it output, and then test its output to make sure it is. And then if it's not what I expect, have it corrected, and and save time like that. So I don't think, like if you're talking about architecture, it may be AI reshapes what architecture, architects do, but at the end of the day, architects are still going to be needed to, check the output, be able to tell AI what it's needed. And hey, thank you for the likes, and more what to do. So again, there will be always jobs. It may be that the job market and society is transformed again like it was when computers came in, because computers made things a lot more efficient. It saved a lot of time. And now we have things like refrigerators that can tell you what you're running low down, and what you need. You can get messages to your phone when your dishwasher or washing machine is done. So you can start to manage and plan your day, and have more free time, because you got technology that can manage it for you. And that's really what AI is about, is just the next step in technology. So I don't think we need to be afraid. We just need to embrace it. And if you take a look back 30 years ago when computers came in, those who advanced and were successful in their careers were the ones who embraced computers. Those who shunned it or were too afraid was held back. And so again, my advice is, as I'm about ready to sign off here, is to embrace AI and not to be afraid. So again, I have given a couple tips and advice to people. If you are looking for some practice questions for interviews, contact me. I'll send you the information. Also, too, if you're looking for support with interviewing, CV, anything else, just message me and we can have a quick chat. Otherwise, thank you all for the gifts, the likes, the shares, and the follows, and I will see you back.